And good morning. Yesterday I was working on the paperwork to submit to the court prior to the hearing scheduled for the 18th of this month, 2 weeks from yesterday. And of course, when I'm working on this, one of the key components is the Bill of Rights and the limitations placed on government by the Constitution of the United States. And as I sat in the meditation room this morning, I felt that I wanted to look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was drafted by the UN. I have seen that previously, but I wanted to refresh my memory as to exactly what it contained. And so I came to the computer and I looked it up and got a little bit of history on it. So today's talk is actually entitled 2012, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the little blurb that I wrote: with the founding of the United Nations in 1946, the year I was born, the very first issue taken up was human rights. This was, of course, right after World War II. The Declaration was drafted by 8 men and 1 woman from 9 nations: Lebanon, USSR, China, France, USA, United Kingdom, Australia, Chile, and Canada. It was officially adopted as international law in December 1948. So, if this is the case, how do governments continue to get away with denying basic human rights the world over, including the so-called free nations? My short answer: because criminals run the world. And I provide the link to the UN page about the Declaration of Human Rights, so that anybody that wants to check that out and look for yourself what the 30 rights listed are, and a little bit of the history and the drafters. And by the way, the one woman was the chairperson. That was Eleanor Roosevelt, the widow of the late President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Something interesting also caught my eye as I came to the computer, and I actually saw it yesterday. In Veterans Today, it was posted today, actually, May 5th, in Veterans Today by Gordon Duff, senior editor of the magazine Veterans Today. Obama rejoins the ICC. U.S. no longer rogue state. Justice America? Does Obama really mean it? American war criminals now subject to laws U.S. enforces on others. In a surprise move, President Obama signed an executive order rejoining the International Criminal Court, an organization established originally by the United States to enforce international law and punish war criminals. The U.S. left the court under Bush in order to protect those responsible for kidnapping, drug running, and torture. They may now be arrested, even if American office holders or members of the military or CIA, which oddly enough, many of those responsible for such heinous crimes are. In any case, the awakening that we're in right now, in 2012 and what happened last year in 2011, this global flame of freedom that's burning and waking people up, and people are becoming aware of the criminality of our very governments, of our leaders, of our banks, of our major institutions, the huge multinational corporations. As we're becoming more and more aware of the criminality of these entities, we are also flexing our muscle and claiming our rights, as it should be. And I encourage everyone to go to that web page that I'm posting and look what the international community has stated. Now, there is some contradictions as I looked at some of the material because it shows 9 people as the drafters, and from those 9 countries that I named, but yet in the body of the text and the history, it says that there were 18 representatives from 18 nations involved in the drafting. So they were only showing half of them, and I looked, is there a page 2 with the other 9? And no, if there was, I didn't see it. But they did take people in drafting this from various religions and geographical regions of the world. And not everybody voted for it, some abstained, but nobody objected, including the nation, the then newly formed nation of Israel. I'm assuming that they would not have voted for it, since they abuse human rights worse than any nation on the planet, in my opinion. Well, the United States and them are right up there. And of course, Great Britain is not, or the United Kingdom is not necessarily such an angel when it comes to protecting even the natural rights of people that live in its own country, let alone the rest of the world. But this whole issue of rights, of what are inalienable and unalienable, what these rights are, is pretty much understood by every thinking person, including the people that sit in the ivory towers. I mean, they allowed the creation of this document. It is an official UN document. It doesn't have the same teeth that the United States Constitution has in limiting nations, and yet the World Court and the International Criminal Court have addressed some of these issues, and they will be called upon, I have a feeling, in the weeks and months ahead, as arrests will escalate. And I'm sincere in believing that indeed many of these world-class criminals that sit in the ivory towers are going to be brought to justice. That is essential, and even as the UN paperwork indicates, it's essential for world peace. The protection of human rights is essential for justice and world peace. Indeed, it is. And we are moving in that direction, folks. Now, here's the irony of that. As the human population is waking up to its rights, the very people that have been in the control positions, the positions of apparent power, are trying to tighten the noose around the people's neck and limit the rights and pull those rights away and deny those rights more and more and more. Of course, you know that that's going to backfire. It's going to backfire and boomerang on the very people that want control. They're going to get less and less control. This is inevitable. The more they try to, as I said, tighten the noose, the more people are actually going to break off the shackles and bust asunder the bonds that the elite are using to imprison or attempt to imprison all of humanity. We are waking up to the fact that their dream is to reduce the population by at least 6 or 6.5 billion people on the planet. And of course, they're going to be primarily the majorities, like Asian people, African people. Many of them think that white people are somehow superior, which is BS. I mean, there is no superiority of a race, period. In some aspects, in sports and physical agility and stuff like that, the black people seem to excel. And everyone, the Oriental people seem to be much, much more intelligent than the Occidentals. The Orientals just seem to have a natural kin to engineering and stuff like that. I mean, some of the greatest engineers in the world are coming from China and India and the Asiatic continent. This is an observation, but there is no superiority. We are each part of the whole. And that's the spiritual aspect, or the spiritual awakening of this whole thing. So as I talked yesterday about that committee that was drafting some kind of an oath for people in the Republic to take, this is what happens when you take and you put together people of a common ideology to draft something. It's not going to ever be fair, because it's going to reflect the ideology of those on the committee. And the United Nations at least had the foresight and wisdom to pull people from various perspectives as far as religion and geography and culture. That was great wisdom that they did this. And this is what we need to do now. There needs to be a voice, someone in a position that can truly represent everybody on the planet. I'd like to be in that position myself, because truly I have always, all of my life, been a supporter of the underdog. My heart has always cried out when I see injustice on anyone. I don't rejoice when I see even people that I would consider enemies. I don't rejoice in their punishment, and I never have. I would love with all of my heart for every man and woman on this planet to wake up and take full responsibility for our lives and recognize that we are one people, regardless of the color of our skin, or our religion, or our culture, or our sexual orientation, or how we define our lives. As long as we allow others to be free, we can be free. But when we impede the freedom of others or try to limit it in any way, we cannot be free. Those that impose their will, or would impose their will on others, are in fact in bondage to an ideology that is lesser than real. It's a sick game. It's a pathology. It's a sociopathy. These are not healthy-minded people. And if ever we needed healthy-minded people to rise to the top and help guide the world into a new world order that is good for everyone, not a new world order that the elitists have envisioned, where they are in total control and nobody can question what they decide. They are the judge and arbiter of every controversy, and controversy itself is to be eliminated from that perspective. No, freedom is freedom of expression for each of us, you and I and all of us. We together have a voice, individually and collectively, and that voice is finally being heard. And there is the basis in human law, including in the United Nations. Now, it has a lot of faults. All governments and institutions have a lot of faults. But we need, in my opinion, we need to find the commonality and the strengths that are present in these institutions, and specifically things like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we need to apply this, and we need to force it home on those that are trying to go in the opposite direction. We need to make it loud and clear around the world that every man and woman, every boy and girl on the planet has rights. And even nature has rights. We need to protect our mother planet. We need to nurture her back to health, and I believe we're going to do that. But we're going to do it by recognizing that we have rights, and by standing in those rights with power and with dedication and with commitment to working together with compassion and wisdom to change the world from one where insane people are in charge to one where you have rational, sane, people that think clearly and understand that love is not just an option, it's the only way out of our dilemma. And I choose love, and that's my religion. And I'm a Christian, but I'm a Jew, and I'm a Muslim, and I'm a Hindu, and I'm a Buddhist, and I'm a Taoist, I'm a Sufi. Well, that's Islam again. I am a Native American. I recognize the spirituality of everyone, and all of them are valid in some areas, and all of them have areas where they're not so valid, or at least don't seem so to me. But we can build on our strengths, and when we do so, we will change the world. But there's a saying that I leave you with that I want each of you to consider. If you don't know your rights, you don't have them. So pay attention to the rights that have been expressed in our recent history of the last few hundred years. Look at those rights. Go all the way back to the Magna Carta, which is even further back. But pay attention. Know who you are and know what your rights are. And don't be afraid to exercise your rights even in the face of opposition. Thank you for listening, and once again, namaste.